It's my privilege to be here today and to talk about autonomous vehicles. And we call it fact or fiction. When I have a chance to talk about some of the technology that's arriving on cars today and what you should be able to look forward to in the next 5 or 10 years, how fast it's going to come, how reliable it's going to be, that kind of thing. And then we'll have a chance for some Q&A at the end. And I think anything's fair game in the world of certainly automotive and automotive electronics. I had the chance to work at Delphi Automotive, and you may remember the name Delco. We used to be the parts group within General Motors, and we're spun out in 1999 into Delphi Automotive. So parts being brakes, airbags, wiring. I worked in the electronics division, which at the time I joined consisted of a radio with tubes, right? That's how primitive it was back then. Of course, it's a significant change from then to now. But I've had the opportunity to run the division. I had the opportunity to run our Asia Pacific operations. At my last 4 or 5 years before I retired, I was the Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President for Delphi. So I had a chance to look over all the technology, about 20,000 engineers around the world, as we designed and solved problems that we innovated for our customers literally around the world. We sold something to everyone. And for most of the big car companies, we had a great deal of content. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those categories, but then how that applies to autonomous vehicles. We long ago didn't invent these macro trends, but certainly the automotive industry is driven by the trends of safe, green, and connected. Vehicles are becoming safer by legislation and by consumer demand. They're becoming greener in terms of less emissions or better fuel economy, and they're becoming more connected. Consumers able to extend their digital lifestyle into the cockpit and demanding more and more of that, particularly the younger demographics. It's just an extension of your digital world. So to speak. So if you think about the automotive industry, when I joined, which was over 40 years ago, one of my first jobs was to put the first computer on a car. So we had a radio with tubes, and that's certainly electronics, but the first computer was a result of the Arab oil embargo back in the 70s that had the US government dictate something called CAFE. And that was a requirement that cars have a certain miles per gallon capability, which required a closed loop computer control. So my first job was to be able to work on that and with a bunch of other people and put that in the vehicle. And I've had the chance ever since to be indirectly or directly involved with just about every computer that's on the car today. And many cars today will have over 50 computers. Some have 100, and the new S-Class coming out here this summer, I'm going to guess it'll be north of 150 computers. Back then, the first computer might have had 20,000 lines of software code. It sounds like a lot, but today it's 100 million lines of software code. And the new S-Class coming out is probably going to be closer to 200 million lines of software code. So the car very quickly here is transitioning from a mechanical to electromechanical to electronic. And it's controlled by electronics, it's controlled by software. Many would say it's a smartphone on wheels. I'm not sure about that because the mechanics is still very important for the automotive industry. But to say that the industry is under disruption is certainly an understatement. It's very difficult to think about traditional car companies going head to head with companies like Apple or Amazon, for example, or Tesla. I mean, Tesla is a great example. Makes a fraction of the number of cars that a General Motors or a Ford or a BMW does, but their market cap, Tesla's market cap is around $800 billion. I mean, it's just an unbelievable number, which is more than GM, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, Toyota, VW, BMW, Mercedes, all combined, right? And make a fraction of the vehicles, and by definition of market cap, they're worth more, but they're a technology company in the automotive space as opposed to an automotive company employing technology. And that's where the disruption is occurring. And where I worked at Delphi, we always tried to stay in the middle. We tried to be the bridge between technology on the West Coast in California, for example, Silicon Valley, and technology and the automotive companies in Detroit, the more of the traditional mechanical kinds of companies. So big opportunities here to add content, but this has all driven a great deal of disruption. So kind of where this all comes together is in autonomous vehicles. And that's what we're going to spend some time talking about. But first and foremost, one of the big advantages of an autonomous vehicle is safety. And there's other advantages, and I'll talk about those. But if you think about one of the big problems in the world today is fatalities and accidents, the socioeconomic cost caused by automotive accidents. So 1.25 million road traffic deaths on an annual basis, according to the World Health Organization. So that's 1 every 30 seconds. And that's a tragedy. And you can multiply that roughly by 6 in terms of the number of accidents that cause physical harm to the driver or the passengers. So a great deal of disruption caused every year by automotive deaths. And some of those are pedestrians, some of those are on the road, a lot of those are in vehicle kinds of things. But a common thread around the world, and this is NHTSA data, National Highway Transportation Safety Authority here in the United States, 94% of all accidents involve human error. And so the more you can take control of the vehicle in a safe way and do better than a human, the safer that opportunity can be. If you can build technology into the vehicle that keeps the car from being distracted, even if the driver is, for example, that is able to see in inclement weather, able to see at night where the driver might have difficulty in doing that, able to see in the lane beside you so you don't make a lane change, for example, able to see behind you or across traffic alerts when you're backing up. If a car's coming into your space, your car knows to stop. Those are the kinds of technologies that will have a real value to you as a consumer, but also it'll have a very significant drop in accidents and that socioeconomic cost around the world. Autonomous vehicles really bring that all together. I mean, that's an opportunity. So top of the list for autonomous vehicles, and by autonomous, there's different levels of autonomy. I'll talk about that, but you tend to want to think of a fully driverless or self-driving vehicle, but big opportunity here for improved safety. A big opportunity for people to access mobility that otherwise wouldn't be able to drive. So maybe the physically challenged, maybe the handicapped, for example, maybe an older demographic that no longer has the eyesight to be able to drive safely. It can provide some mobility there or extend that mobility period significantly. So a big plus there. Driver productivity. If you've got an hour commute into work and an hour back, or whatever the commute is, if you could just put the car on autopilot and do your work or do phone calls or do your email, that's another opportunity to take advantage of time in the vehicle that you otherwise wouldn't have. Less parking required. There's been a lot of studies that would say if you have autonomous vehicles in Robo Taxis, like an Uber or a Lyft, they're constantly roaming around, no drivers, just waiting to be called by an app on your phone, then you don't need parking. You won't need a car and you won't have any reason to park. The data would say 95% of the time for a car owner, the car is parked, right? So in a place like New York City, I mean, that is a major, major problem to provide that kind of parking. And of course, any of you have been there, you know how congested it is and you know how expensive it is to park, even on a weekly, hourly, or a monthly basis. You end up with less congestion. A lot of these studies say you end up with fewer emissions because you have more efficient route travel. And perhaps this is an opportunity to move to electric vehicles. And the list goes on and on. But the number one advantage of autonomous vehicles is improved safety. That's a big opportunity for us. So we put our technology together. This was 2015. We put our technology together, integrated it into an Audi Q5. We were doing a lot of business with Audi at the time. We understood how all their computers worked. We did a lot of them for them. We did a lot of their active safety implementations, but we took that car apart and put it back together with a massive compute platform and about 20 different kinds of sensors. I'll talk about those. And we did a coast-to-coast drive in 2015. I got a short video clip of it here.
I'm Steve Goldblum. idea for this trip came about after a very successful show in CES 2015 in January. So we started to think, what would benefit the technology, and also what would help us prove out that this car is capable of moving to market quickly. And we decided that collecting 2.5 terabytes of data and being the first to go coast to coast in the United States with a self-driving car or an automated car would be pretty compelling. How does a car drive itself? An analogy that we like to make when you ask is, think about how a human works. If you think about your eyes, your ears, and your nose as the sensors, the same thing happens with vision and radar and laser on the vehicle. The controller is kind of like your brain, and the smart logic and the software that runs on that is really the heart and soul of how the car drives itself.
So San Francisco to New York was 3,400 miles, 15 states. It was 5 to 6 days to get all that done. And it was 99% hands-free. So we had a safety driver under the wheel, but the driver never engaged. The driver was there in case something would go wrong or there would be an unexpected sequence that we'd have to react to. But just an incredible learning opportunity for us. A couple of, as you heard the voiceover, a couple of terabytes of data that we accumulated at the time, which is very valuable to guide not only our forward development projects, but a lot of our customers, including Audi. They learned a lot out of this. Now you notice here's a picture of the car. It looks like a normal car. You've probably seen some of the Google or the Waymo cars or some of the other automated driving vehicles that have a big bar on top. It has a lot of sensors on top. We know that that styling is going to be a problem eventually as this technology is integrated in the car. So we went to great lengths. This team in Mountain View did a fantastic job of integrating all of those sensors into the vehicle. So if you think about the sensors here, it had 20 plus sensors in there. So I had a lot of cameras, had a lot of radar sensors in there, again, looking in many directions, had LiDAR. LiDAR is a laser-based kind of radar. So you send a laser signal out and you're looking for that feedback back. But at the end of the day, these are all tied together with a massive compute platform. And I'm talking a very, very extensive compute platform to be able to real-time evaluate what all these sensors are saying, know exactly where that vehicle is. So that if you have to make a move, if you have to make an emergency maneuver, if you have to react in any way, you know exactly where the car is and you know exactly where everything is around you. So a lot of fun to do this and a great demonstration of capability. But the point is, it's doable with technology today, right? So what are the things that keep it from happening? This is the NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Authority, how they define automated driving. So if you look at level 0 on the right, that's absolutely no technology at all. And if you look at level 5 on level 0 on the left, no automation. Level 5 on the right, that's where there's no driver required. All right, so that's typically what you think of on an autonomous vehicle is you can get a bottle of wine, get in the back seat and drink, and the car will deliver you to wherever you want to go. But the reality is that somewhere in between here is not only where we are today, but where we're going to be for quite a while. So on the road today, we have level 1 and level 2. So this is an automation of 2 or more control functions. And you see the pictorial where you've got a beam out in front of the vehicle. That's a camera. And then you've got another set of beams there. That's radar looking ahead. That's implemented on a lot of vehicles today, not only in the United States, but around the world, but it's available on over 80% of vehicles today. And there's about a 40% penetration on this. So just a radar and a vision system mounted up behind your rear view mirror can keep you from running into things and can keep you from going outside of your lane. We call that level 2. And again, widely available today. Level 3 is the ability, but in level 2, you still have to keep your hands on the wheel. If you take your hands off the wheel for more than 10 or 15 seconds, your car will remind you that you need to get back in the game, take control of the steering. And if you don't do that, it will turn off those functions. Level 3 does exactly the same thing, but it also then allows you to drive without touching the wheel for an extended period of time. You still have to be in the game. You still have to be looking forward. You still have to be awake. So you can't be doing email. You can't be, talking to the person in the back seat of the vehicle. But so you still have to be ready to take over. But it takes away all of the intensity of driving. Allows you to drive with low stress, and also make sure that even if you're distracted for just the slightest bit, your vehicle isn't distracted and will keep you safe. Level 4 is a higher level of that, and then level 5 is just being able to take the driver totally out. So you program your phone, say, hey, I want to go to 1217 North Lindsay, and the vehicle will go immediately there. And that will be available sometime in the future. But today, 2021, level 3 is debuting on several vehicles around the world. And like I said, level 2 has been out there for a couple. You may have experienced this yourself. So when are we going to have fully autonomous vehicles? So we did the drive. A lot of companies are spending billions of dollars on this technology and making investments to be ready for this. Like I said, it's technically doable today, but we still need a legal framework in that if there's an accident, who's at fault, particularly in the United States and in the litigious society that we live in. I mean, that'll be a very important thing to get through. We need a regulatory environment that's supportive here, and that is changing pretty quickly in the United States, where there's pilots available now, several places in the United States, I'll talk about those, where they're actually going without drivers and doing a lot of road testing to make sure that the technology is good, it's safe, and it's reliable all the time. But you need a regulatory environment that will help every car company or every vehicle on the road kind of behave the same way, like your turn signals and brakes and steering wheel do today. And right now there's a mix and a mash of how some of these results are achieved and where the sensors are located and how the cars react. So you need a regulatory environment that will help bring that into a common framework for the consumer, much as it's done with emissions controls, airbags, and those kinds of things in the past. And then you need affordability. And this may be the biggest hurdle of all, because you saw if you got 20 sensors on a vehicle and a massive compute platform, that could be $10,000 adder, right? So when you're talking about a $30,000 vehicle, that is a major, major adder to the vehicle. And when the consumer isn't really willing to pay another $5. So that's that a lot of work needs to be done there to work on the affordability, and it is being done, and that will get better in scale. So the good news is, like I said, with this level 1 and level 2 already on the road, that if you're after safety, if you're after improving safety on the road and reducing accidents, reducing fatalities, that level 1 and level 2 is already there. So again, for the price of a couple of sensors, all right, now you're talking hundreds of dollars now, not thousands of dollars. For hundreds of dollars, you get about 80% of the safety benefit of a fully autonomous vehicle. Again, if you've got a radar that keeps you from running into things, and you've got a lane departure warning or a lane keeping system that will keep you between the lines, that's when, according to NHTSA data, that's where 80% of the accidents and fatalities occur in the United States. And that's pretty much universal around the world. You're either running into something or you're going outside of your lane. So if you can put, like I said, hundreds of dollars of sensors on your vehicle, you can address 80% of the causes of accidents and fatalities in the United States. So you get a great deal of active safety benefit well before you ever have to go to autonomy, whenever that would occur. So if you look at, again, the crash fatalities in the United States, this is a 2015 chart, but it hasn't changed much. Car companies have done a fantastic job making cars safer. The airbag deployments are really phenomenal now in terms of providing help and not hurting people. The crush zones, the structural integrity of the vehicles has really, really come a long way. In addition to things like seatbelt mandates, which was huge, and believe it or not universal around the world, and airbags. Just having airbags not only for the driver, but for the passenger, and side airbags as well, make a tremendous difference in the accident statistics. But starting about 2014, it flatlined. the progress did not continue down. We were in the 33, 34,000 range of fatalities per year. And in 2015, it went up to 40,000. And in 2016 and 2017, there was similar data there. So part of the reason was there were more miles driven those years, but even on a fatality per mile driven, the number went up. And one of the big issues, we still got alcohol issues to deal with, or substance abuse issues. Those are a little better, but not much, but it's distraction. And everybody thinks of, okay, a phone as distraction, and there's no doubt that is a distraction opportunity, but it's any kind of distraction that if you're not paying attention at the right time, you could be in trouble. And we get away with that. We get away with that all the time. So forget the cell phone. We all do and shouldn't things with the cell phone that are inappropriate. But if you're eating or drinking or talking to passengers or adjusting your radio or grooming, putting on makeup, combing your hair, all of those things take your eyes off the road. If it happens at the time where you are threatened and you don't have that time to react, then that's where an accident can occur and maybe the tragedy of a fatality. A study done about 30 years ago said if you give a driver a half second's notice on an impending collision, you can mitigate 60% of collisions. If you give them 1 second's advance notice on an impending collision, you can mitigate 90% of accidents. So if you think about a half second, if you're looking at my eyes right now, I'm going to look down and look up. That's a half second. And think about how many times you do that in a vehicle. And we do it all the time. We get away with it all the time. And 999 times out of 1,000, we're okay. It's just that one time, if it happens with an impending collision that you're not aware of and you can't take evasive action, that's where a tragedy could occur. So that's the really good news about active safety is that technology can be engaged all the time. So even if you're distracted, the car isn't. You never lose that half second or that second of being able to respond to a threatening situation, being able to respond to somebody cutting in or somebody running a stop sign or running a red light or going down your street too fast when you're backing out of your driver, all those things that can happen. So that's the beauty of active safety. And that's where we're going to see a significant improvement in accident statistics as active safety becomes more penetrated into the automotive market. So I would conclude on autonomous vehicles that they're not ready for the reasons I described, right? A legal framework, a regulatory environment, and just the cost. How much will consumers be willing to pay? But you've got a lot of active safety building blocks that are on the road today and are going to be more penetrated. These are some of the names you may have heard: ProPilot Assist, Super Cruise, Autopilot, ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, Backup Alert, Lane Departure Warning, Automatic Emergency Braking. Sometimes these names mean exactly the same thing. It's just a different car company's way of branding it or describing it. But this is where that regulatory environment is going to have to help us center in on what these things are called, how they operate, how you'll interface with them, and how they'll make your drive even safer in the future than it is today. And they're working on it. There lots of work are going on behind the scenes to get that regulatory environment in shape, and to give us all as consumers confidence that the technology is ready for prime time, and we can depend on it literally with our lives. So when will we have fully autonomous vehicles? This is my view. So you've got pilots going on all over the place. You may have read about Waymo in Phoenix. They're taking the driver out of the car now. You can install an app in your vehicle and call up a Waymo vehicle and get a ride with no safety driver in it at all. And that's a first. And they're going to be expanding that into several other cities around the United States, I think maybe even overseas. The company I used to work for, Delphi, is now called Aptiv, and they've been running a pilot program in Las Vegas with Lyft. So they've got a bunch of Q5s out there, as you described, and they've gone, I think, to even some other vehicles now. And they've had over 100,000 rides there with a safety driver, but taking all kinds of data, understanding the edge cases, understanding the technology improvements that need to be made, at the same time giving consumers an opportunity to experience the technology and gain confidence that this will be something that they would be comfortable with in the future. You've got Baidu running in Shanghai. I saw General Motors, their Cruise operation. They've got a subgroup they call Cruise is going to run not only vehicles in the United States, I think in San Francisco, but they're also going to work in Japan and maybe some European cities as well. So a lot of pilots going on. So I would project that we're going to see the first place you'll see wider deployment will be robo taxis. Like the Lyft rides in Las Vegas, for example, where consumers are going point A to point B. It's a pretty well mapped area. So vehicles know exactly where they are and know exactly the latitude they have to move. And and there's a business case for it, right? Because you end up taking a driver out of the vehicle. You lose the cost of that. You've got the cost of the technology, but if you can't get enough drivers, which seems to be a problem for the Ubers and Lyfts of the world, then here's an opportunity to solve that problem. I think heavy duty trucking, I think there's a big business case in heavy duty trucking, and that's probably going to be in the second part of this decade, maybe 2026, 2028. If you think about it, the trucking industry, and particularly in today's of Amazon, where there's all kinds of package deliveries going on in the last 2 years that we've never seen before, but they cannot get enough drivers in the heavy duty trucking industry. So, and their biggest cost in the heavy duty trucking industry is two things. It's the driver and it's fuel. So if you can take that driver out of the equation, you not only solve the problem of driver availability, but you end up with a business case that would perhaps more than offset the cost of the technology in the first place. And then a consumer availability. I know a lot of car companies make projections that they're going to have it this year, or we're going to have, so many of these vehicles by 2022 and so on and so forth. But I think for consumer availability, for you to go to a dealership and order one, I think we're still 6 or 7, maybe 8 years away from that. And again, it's that regulatory environment, it's that legal framework, and then how much are you willing to pay for this, to be able to enjoy this technology. But again, the good news is the active safety components, a fraction of the cost of a fully autonomous vehicle, can make a tremendous difference in vehicle safety today. And that's what, autonomous vehicles will build on the building blocks. That'll be the foundation, that being active safety. So that's a big opportunity to get that widely penetrated, again, around the world, certainly in the United States, reduce accidents, reduce the cost to society of accidents and fatalities. And we can all enjoy an easier and more stress-free drive out of that well before we ever get to autonomous. So that's my view, and I'm wide open to take some dialogue or questions on any of that or really anything automotive.
Ladies and gentlemen, now you're welcome to raise your hands. I see one hand raised, and Mrs. Barbara Rosenblum. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. That was a wonderful discussion or presentation. Are there any specific automobile companies that we should question if we're buying a new car about their advancements? I know you may not want to name them, but it would be helpful to me.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and thanks for the feedback. Look, I think every car company with cars available in the United States have to go through so much validation of technology and so much validation of their vehicles, from emissions to safety requirements, et cetera, that you should feel pretty confident that their implementations are going to be reasonable, they're going to be safe, and they're probably going to be pretty conservative. Where I start to worry is where some of the car companies will brand something like and call it autopilot, right?
Yes.
Like Tesla calls it autopilot, and it's not. I mean, it's not an auto. It's certainly an assist. There's no doubt about it, but it gives the impression that you can literally go in the back seat and take a nap while you're driving.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing videos, out there on YouTube where people are doing exactly that. They're filming themselves doing that. And the technology is not ready for that. There's no question about that. And that's a concern for NHTSA. That would be a concern. But will the technology work as advertised? If you read the, the fine print, will it keep you from running into things? Will it keep you in your lane? Every car company has a little different way of letting you know that, or having the vehicle react. But it's all, you should feel pretty good about the integrity of the technology at this point. Car companies know that if they put something out there that's not ready for prime time, that could be a major, major problem for them economically. So they're going to be a little conservative on that.
So we should just ask for their highest technology. I mean, do they go by the level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you put out?
No, they don't. That's the way the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority looks at it. But they would be things like lane departure warning or lane keeping assist that keeps you in your lane. That'll be a camera up behind your rear view mirror that's widely available. Automatic emergency braking, some call that ADAS, or advanced driver assistance system. Some call it crash alert, crash avoidance. But if you look at the safety, it's usually called a safety package. Mm-hmm. So on some vehicles, it's starting to be standard equipment, but otherwise you have to opt for the option of a safety package. The dealership would be able to easily tell you what they have available in that category and how much it will cost you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Before we allow Mr. Stelger ask another question, just wanted to let you know, I just launched a poll, just a 30 seconds questionnaire to let us know what you thought about this session. So if you could please take your time to do that. And Mr. Stelger will be allowed in just a second to talk. We also have one chat. I will ask that question in just a minute. Mr. Stelger, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Jeff, thanks for the presentation. It was an excellent presentation. The question I have, and I don't know if there's a good answer for it, but obviously, as you go back in time, cars that are older don't have the technology that new cars do and the safety that they provide. Is there any kind of a guide where you could say, all right, if you have a car that's 20 years old, you should replace it with something newer, and you'll benefit by so much safety or reduction in fatalities that might be going forward versus, a 10-year-old car or 5-year-old car and so on. Is there any kind of a guide that's out there that would allow people to assess their current vehicle and whether it should be upgraded?
Yeah, no, not really. A lot of the active safety technology, the collision avoidance and the lane keeping or lane departure, has really been there in any kind of volume for the last 6 or 7 years. So if your car is older than that, you probably don't have that. That doesn't mean you don't have a safe car, but you could be safer if you upgraded to a newer vehicle that contained it. Cars that are 20 years old have last generation airbags. Again, airbags are rarely deployed. It's usually not an issue, and they were safe at the time. But the new airbags, the 2-stage deployment, the more targeted deployment of side airbags, even curtain airbags, in some of the newer vehicles, again in the last 5 to 10 years, would provide you a better safety cocoon in the event of an accident. So I'm sure you can always say tomorrow's car is going to be safer than today, but generally speaking, the airbags are pretty common over the last 3 or 4 years. Automatic emergency braking is going to be relatively consistent. It's just a matter of whether the car has it or doesn't. But if you want to upgrade to active safety, you're probably going to have a vehicle that's 5 years old or less to be able to access that.
Thank you.
I have one more question from Mr. Eric Berry. He does not have a microphone, but the question is, do you see the states legislating stop driving differently, where you could see functionality allowed in some states but not others? Or is there a national guidelines that will supersede? And another question is, inspired by Ken's suggestion, do you think other car manufacturers will allow Tesla's approach of over-the-air software deployed safety features and ongoing upgrades to the code over time?
Yeah, great questions. Let's deal with the second question first. Over the air is definitely going to be the way of the future. Almost every car company is working on that technology today for a variety of reasons. I mean, one of the things that you don't like to do as a consumer is take your car back to the dealership to get it fixed or to get a warranty service or to get a recall taken care of, for example. I mean, that's not a satisfier. What Tesla's able to do, which is genius, is they set up their compute platforms to be able to receive securely over the air different kinds of computer code. So you can literally wake up every day, and if you own a Tesla, you've seen this message, you have a new vehicle today, right? Well, in reality, most of the time, they're just fixing a software problem. And you're feeling good about it because you think you got a new vehicle. Occasionally, they're adding new features and functions or different levels of capability. And that's a wonderful thing because you don't have to take it back to the dealership. If you're in a traditional car company and you have a software problem, you've got to take it back. You've got to have the software rewritten or have a electronic computer replaced. And that is not a satisfier for a consumer. So car companies are definitely devoted to doing this, but you have to be able to do it securely. If you exchange code, if you put new information in the vehicle, once it's been validated, once it's been final tested at the assembly plant, you got to be really, really sure you're putting good stuff in there that isn't going to cause more problems than it's solving and will be absolutely safe. And in the era of cybersecurity, you got to make sure that exchange happened 100% accurately. But that's all doable, and that is definitely coming. What was the first part of the question again? I'm sorry, Aga.
Sure. Inspired by Ken's question, do you think that car manufacturers will follow Tesla approach over the air software, deployed safety features, and ongoing upgrades to the code over time?
Yeah. So I think I answered that.
Okay, so the first one is, I'm sorry, that was about the legislation and how will it be handled statewide or in national ways. Will there be a national guidelines that will supersede, or will each state create their own guidelines in regards to autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, it's every state has the opportunity to offer, like Florida offers an opportunity to do pilots of autonomous vehicles here. So it's a friendly state to automated driving. Arizona is also a friendly state. Indiana is a friendly state. Michigan's a friendly state. California is a friendly state, for example. So they've taken the opportunity on top of federal rules and regulation to say, hey, here, with these conditions, with these requirements, you can put these vehicles on the road for a period of time, or so many vehicles per day, or that kind of thing. So states have the opportunity to do that. But to answer your question, it really will take a federal view here, a national view, to get the technology to look and feel the same in every vehicle. So again, like a turn signal or like your push ignition push, or how you tune your radio, everybody has a little different scheme on that, but it's generally exercised the same way. And we need exactly the same thing to happen with different levels of autonomy. Automatic emergency braking, if you've experienced that in a vehicle, you know that some car companies will screech you to a halt quickly, and others will let you get a little closer to the vehicle. Again, it's a software algorithm, and it's based on their data, what they think is the safest implementation. It's likely the federal regulation will have a bandwidth there that will say, as long as you're in this bandwidth, it's okay with us, right? So I do think we'll have some national guidelines on that. I don't think the states will be able to participate at that level. At least in the past, that's been the case.